The first thing I want to talk about is connecting your graphical user interface with functions using TKinter in Python. So um, the reason, obviously, that this is important is that that's how you provide the functionality to your programs, right? You know how to create functions and do things with the command line. You know, hopefully now a little bit of how to build an interface that looks nice or looks like it could do something. So the ability to connect that interface with functions is what makes that program actually work, and it makes it useful. We're going to keep it pretty simple today. We are going to look at how to trigger a function with a button that takes input from a text field or an entry field, does something with it, and then displays it in a label. And that should give you enough of a basis for how things work to sort of build on that if you want to go a little bit deeper. But the truth is, for most of the basic things that you might be thinking about for this project, that simple functionality of a button controlled function that does something with an entry field is probably going to satisfy most of what you're going to do. And if you're brave enough to go beyond that, then you probably are brave enough also to look it up. So what we've got to start with here is a very simple interface that I created for calculation. And it just happens to mirror one of our early assignments in the class. We've got a label that says input your temperature in Fahrenheit, an entry field, a button, and another label that doesn't have anything in it yet. So that's the whole thing, and it's going to be very simple. What we want here is we want the user to be able to put their temperature here in Fahrenheit, click the button, and get the result that shows the converted temperature. So that just takes a few pieces of information. You can see here I've got a function up here called convert temp. I'm not going to do anything with that just yet because I'm going to start by actually providing the ability to access the information in this entry field. And the way that I need to do that is by binding a variable to that entry field. Okay, so the easiest way to do that is with a command that is part of TKinter called string var or string variable. So if I go str input equals string variable, that's the first part of it, is to create that variable that's external. And I'm actually creating a variable that is represented by an object called string var. Now, first thing to remember about this is that a string var is not a string. It's an object that contains a string. Feels like the same thing, does not behave the same thing. So it works similarly, but that object actually has a container inside it that we have to use methods to get and to put things in that. So that's just something to remember as we build that function. But as far as binding that variable, that object, to the entry field, I am just going to say text field equals str input. There we go. And that's that one. The other thing that I need to do is I need to bind a showing variable to the label where I'm going to show the information. You can see this label I've done some formatting with. It's got a height of 5 lines, a width of 30 characters, a border width of 2, relief of solid, so it's a solid line around it that's 2 pixels wide. And I've set the font to impact and 30 pixels high. Important thing to remember there is that if you change the font size, remember this is not in pixels, this is in lines of text, and characters if I'm showing text, or by default. If I show an image in a label, then it changes. The height and width changes to pixels. But if I have a 5 lines tall label and I change the font size and make it twice as large, those 5 lines are twice as large. So it changes the label size when I change the font size. Just something to keep in mind. So with this label, I want to um, create another variable. That's too long. I'll just do it as short as possible. And then I'm going to once again bind that to this by saying text. Is that what I said? Text field. That's what it was. I think it's text variable, actually. I just need to double check that really quick to make sure. Text variable. I was right the second time. So I'm going to fix this. It's not text field, it's text variable. Sorry about that. I was thinking the wrong language. All right, so we've got text variable here binding this this label or this string variable to that label. So we can use that now to show text. And now we have a variable bound to the entry field so we can gather the text. So now that we have those things, we can actually create this function. Now, the nice thing about this function is that it by default has the ability to access those variables from inside the function for both reading and writing, because they are special objects. So when I want to convert that, I'm going to say str. Actually, I'm going to change it to a float on the fly. FL temp, or I'm just going to go Fahrenheit equals. I'm going to use str input, and then I'm going to use get. Okay, and then I'm going to turn that to a float right there on the fly. And then I can use this little formula here. That'll convert that to Celsius. I should probably change that to that. And now I'm going to put it into the label. So I'm going to go, what was it? strc equals, no, it's not equals, it's put set. There it is. I knew I'd get it eventually. And then we want to change that to actually, no, I'm going to use an F string. I changed my mind. It is going to be FLC, and we will make sure that that's only because multiplying by 5 and divided by 9, you can get some funky decimals, some really long ones. So I'm going to limit that to just 2 decimal places. That might be a tad long for that label. So then it'll print it in a friendly-ish kind of way. And that should do it. Let's give it a shot and see what happens. Okay, so 32 degrees Fahrenheit doesn't do anything. Oh, last thing I forgot is I forgot to tell the button that it was supposed to call that command. So there we go. Convert temp needs to go right down here. Command equals convert temp. Make sure you get rid of the parentheses so it doesn't call that on the fly. And now it should work. I was just testing you all. There we go. So that's 32 is 0 degrees Celsius. 56 is 13 degrees Celsius. And there you have it. The magic of functions. So the nice thing there is I'm able to access and set those variables. So both read and write to variables from inside the function. You just need to be a little bit careful because it's almost as if we're using global. And sometimes it is easier to use global when you're using TK, but you don't always need to if you're writing to and reading from TK objects. It makes it semi-permeable